So I want to talk a little bit about my car, Orange Man Bad, and what sets it apart from many other stick shift cars. So this is an H pattern car. It is a T56. That's one thing you have to understand. This is a T56. This is like one of these transmissions that you see over here, face plated. That's what's in it. It's not a Liberty box. It's not a clutchless box. This is an H pattern T56 like you could find in a street car, just with some modifications to make it shift faster. So let's look at what's inside. So here we are sitting in my car, and this is the shifter setup. So you can see here, typical shifter, strain gauge setup, which allows me to have ignition cut between the gears. So what that does is when I go from first to second, it detects that I'm moving the shifter, and it'll cut ignition, it'll cut power for a split second and allow me to go into the next gear. So on a small displacement car like this, a little motor with a big turbo, what happens is you cut that ignition, and when you come into the next gear, the motor has to spool the turbo back up to get it back up into power. So every shift on one of these cars, you lose power. That's the big difference between an H pattern car like this with either using the clutch or using a strain gauge or whatever you're using to get into the next gear. That's the big difference between H pattern cars and a sequential or a Liberty or any of these other like clutchless type cars that they call. So one of the other big things that can happen here is there's no lockout on these gears. So you can make a big mistake. So if you look at this setup down here, it is a typical shifter, just right out of a 2000 Camaro, basically. An LS T56 Camaro, that's the shifter that I'm using for this. There's no safeties, no lockouts. You can make a mistake and it can cost you an engine, it can cost you trans, it can cost you more than that. But basically, you know, typically 1, 2, 3, 4. But, you know, even the most seasoned drivers can make a mistake and go 1, 2, 1. And I'm going to show you that right now, what happened to me at the Hail Mary Derby.
110 short for Grannis. Oh man, he was on one.
The really wild thing is after that pass where I 1-2-1'd it, we went back out there. The motor sounded okay. I was nervous about it, but the motor sounded okay. So we went back out there, and that's when you saw the pass where I ran 703 against the Bill Lutz Camaro. So the motor was still in good shape. We went 215 mile an hour on that pass after the 1-2-1 shift. So that's kind of a testament to these motors and what they can handle, because that motor spun to 12,500 RPMs for a half a second on that 1-2-1 shift, and it still was able to come through and go back out there and make a 215 mile an hour 7-0 second pass.
Runner out of Pennsylvania. Here we go. Bill Lutz left side, Joe Grant's right side. There we go. There we go. There we go. Top end. 622 to a 703. Look at the speed for Grannis. 215 miles an hour. Wow, how about that? 620.
The one thing you can't see in that last video is I am shitting bricks, because I pull the chute 215 mile an hour, pull the handle, it doesn't open. I'm on the brakes as hard as I can be on the brakes, and it's not slowing down. And I get to the half-mile point, and the chute, I hit some bumps, and the chute finally opens up and comes out, and I'm able to slow down. But I am scared. I'm scared that I'm going into the sand at the end of the track. But luckily, the chute came out just at the right time, and I was able to get the car slowed down and was able to stop. So back to the whole Liberty clutchless style trans. So that's like one of the things that I eventually want to do in this car. That's just basically the same trans that Titan runs in their copper car. But what it does is allow you to basically just shift sequentially. So this would be your first gear. You would shift to second. You would shift to third, fourth, and fifth. And some of them are even 6 speeds. But I would probably do a 5-speed. And the big advantage to those clutchless style trans is you can go full power on the shifts. There's no drop in power. It's basically like an automatic. You do full power. You hit your shift light, bam, full power into second gear. You hit your shift light, bam, full power into third gear. There is no ignition cuts, no drop out of power, no re-spool in a turbo on all these. Bam, like your shifts are full power. It would make such a big difference in this car in ET. So it's something that I eventually plan to do. It's kind of like the natural evolution of this car. But for now, I want to get the record dropped down a little bit lower. I had a taste of that on that pass where I 1-2-1'd. That was a 1-1-60 foot. So that shows some really big potential in this car. If I can put that together with a full pass where I don't, F up the shifts, it's gonna be a really good pass. So that's the goal for Texas, is to set the record lower, and then this car is gonna make an evolution into probably more of a clutchless style transmission setup. So aside from the bad passes and the troubles we had at Hail Mary Derby, we did have one really great pass, and we reset the world record again with a 684 at 213 mile an hour.
Going 712. So how many fans out there want to see the Bel Air outrun the Supra? Who wants to see the Supra put it in the 6-second zone? I think it's pretty even. Here we go. Much better. Much better. Top end of the racetrack. Bam! 684! Baby! New world record, Joe Grant, 684, 213 miles an hour.
Just send it right there. That's what I'm talking about. 684, 213. Hunter goes in a 6-second zone. That's what they were going for. 698.
The car shows some really good potential with that 1-1-60 foot. We should get a deep 6 with that putting it all together in a full pass. So that is what the plan is for Texas, and we hope to see you down there. I'm taking a 4-month off from racing until then. So I hope to see you guys all down in Texas, and we hope to reset the record again.